It's time to get real about painting your house. Whether you're looking to update some rooms, preparing to sell your home, or just about to celebrate the closing of your new home, this video is for you. If you're looking for the perspective from a realtor or the nitty-gritty details from a professional painter, you're in luck, because today you're gonna get both. Let's go. Hey, I'm Danny Barron, and I run a top 1% real estate team here in the Cincinnati area. Thanks for rocking with us here on the channel. If it's your first time or if you're back for more, make sure to subscribe below to help us keep this channel growing. We want to make sure that we're putting our content in front of the right people that it can help. If you're getting ready to make a move, feel free to contact us below to discuss your unique situation or to set up a 15-minute discovery call. Look, we've seen it all with painting: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Those who have hired painting out and those who have done it themselves. Some of you have the gift of cutting lines in beautifully, and some of you, needless to say, not so much. Whether or not you want to believe it, the paint both inside and outside of your home is incredibly important. First impressions matter, and as a realtor, I can tell you that your paint selection, quality, and application go a long way when people interpret what they think of your home. Today, I'm here rocking with my guy, Jordan Curtis from Curtis Painting, who service Cincinnati, Dayton, and Northern Kentucky. We're gonna get into the details of what you need to know about painting, and especially if you're considering some DIY paint, stick around until the end, and Jordan will let you know what you need to purchase and use to get that job done well. Jordan, dude, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Appreciate your time right out of the gates. Let's jump right in. Why should somebody paint their home? What value does that add? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's two ways to look at it. So either you're moving into your house and you're thinking about painting, or you're thinking about selling, and why should we paint? So if you're moving into your house, paint is absolutely, bar none, the biggest bang for the buck improvement you can make to a house. You could renovate your kitchen, your bathroom. Say you just renovate your bathroom. You could spend 15 to 20 grand just in your bathroom, and at the end of the day, you have one room done.
Yep.
You could take that same amount of money and spend it toward paint and get the whole house looking just the way you want it, with the colors you want.
With that. It's like amazing. The feel too is completely different, right?
Yeah, the value, the quality of life. I mean, when you paint and you take ownership of the house, painting is really that way of saying, this is out with the old, this is now my house. It's kind of that, people don't realize how much they need that moment of, this is now my house, and I'm establishing that by changing all the colors.
Yep. When people are getting ready to move into a house, let's say we close on a sale with somebody and they're getting ready to move in, is it better to paint before they move in or once they've got some stuff in? What have you seen with that?
So what I always advise people, it is way easier to paint your house, whether you're doing it yourself or having a company do it. Paint your house before you move in. Get it all light and neutral, even if you're not sure like how all the rooms are going to set up, what you're going to have on the walls, furniture, all the X factors, the pops of colors.
Yep.
Get everything nice and neutral. Get it all throughout the house, just one neutral color, and then your style will come out in the things you put in the house after that. And the neutral will just allow for color to pop in everything that you already have anyway.
Yeah, that's good. And I know you and I both see a ton of different homes in different conditions. So as somebody's coming and getting ready to put their house on the market, what have you seen? I always advise people, because there's differences also between, we can get in the details of touch-ups versus complete paint jobs.
Right,
What's your advice for somebody getting ready to sell their house?
Yeah, so the value in selling your house is you don't want any reason for someone to walk into your house and say, oh, I just wish that wasn't there, right? That sigh of, house is so good except this, right? And whether it's touch-ups or painting your whole house or painting entire rooms, whatever you decide to do, you want, at the end of the day, as a person selling your house, you want as many people interested in your house as possible. So if you have your own style in your house, say you've got some funky blues or whatever it is in the house, that's great for your style, but you've got to think that's your style. And you're unique and you're different than everyone else, or at least everyone wants to believe they're unique. But when you're selling a house, you don't want it to be unique. You want as many buyers as possible interested in your house, because if you get more buyers, you get more offers. And if you get more offers, you get better offers, and everybody wins, or at least you win.
You're spot on. I think when people limit themselves to a house that also feels lived in, paint, you said it earlier, it's one of the cheaper things you can do, but it takes the lived in feel of if you've got kids kicking walls or anything like that.
Or you just think stairways, people are always putting their hands on the walls in stairways. Look at your stairway right now. I guarantee there are handprints on that wall.
And bringing in, I think, the fresh perspective to get that listed looking really good.
Right.
To your point, people can go whatever direction they want with it, but if that's done ahead of time and then the photos look amazing and when people are visiting the home, I have also found that people that do not have like the design eye really struggle to picture something changing. So you could do, I call paint the thing that you could maybe do your whole house for $5,000. It might increase your sale price by $15,000 or $20,000 because the feel and what people can see feels like a completely different home.
I do think there's one more point to make with painting your house before is, say, a lot of times in ceilings, especially, you have water stain in the ceiling, you had a roof leak, your chimney was leaking, whatever it was. You've probably gotten that issue fixed before selling. Hopefully you were smart enough to do that, right? But you've lived with the water stain because you say, I know that problem's fixed or whatever. A potential buyer doesn't know that you've gotten that fixed.
It
and
terrifies
they're
them.
completely believing you, right? And so if you don't want them to even think about the possibility that there was once a leak in your house, then get that spot touched up, get that spot fixed so that there's no question in their mind, because it may not even be the buyer, it might be their inspector that comes in and looks at it and
100%.
says, well, there might be something wrong here. There was clearly a water leak.
See it
And it's
all
like,
the
no,
time.
it's not there. Any question or doubt that you have that you can take out of the buyer's mind is worth more than you'll ever pay for painting your house.
Perfectly well said. So let's talk like timeline here. How long does it take to paint a house? You could get into a room maybe or a whole house, square footages, however you want to frame that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So a typical like medium-sized house, like say 2,000 to 3,000 square foot house, we could paint just about the whole house in about 2 to 3 days, maybe 4. A bigger house like 4,000 plus, maybe a week. And that's, let me be clear, like that's a 2 or 3 day or a week long of concentrated, like 8 to 6, a team of 3 to 5 people, like focused work. The difference in the DIY versus a professional touch is that's about how many hours you're looking at. That 8 hours times 3, because 3 people working, 3 days working on the job. If you were to take that and you were to DIY that, people work. People have full-time jobs. They have lives outside of whatever their home projects they have. So if you're taking that project and you're saying, I'm going to take this and I'm going to DIY it, you're spending an hour here, an hour on Wednesday afternoon, 3 hours on the weekend, and then you've got the soccer game, and then you come back, and
it's real.
It takes a while to get back into the groove of painting, and you maybe have another hour or two that evening, right? And so you stretch that out, and you're looking at weeks, maybe months, unless you can afford some time off or something like that.
And when you think about the smell of paint too and being displaced from your home, I know some people have, when we've worked with you, chosen to we're just going to evacuate while your team does this for 2 or 3 days.
Some people go and get a hotel room or an Airbnb, and it's like, great.
Even if you're hiring Joe Schmo with the truck, he's not going to be able to do all the manpower that a team can. So I would say you're a more well-established team. There's obviously going to be the national companies. You're a large local team, and then there's the individual guy. So it could take him weeks to be able to do a whole house.
Yeah, when it comes to painting companies or people that say they are painters, there's a whole spectrum, right? There's companies with huge overhead, lots of crews, big numbers, all that. And they can come in and maybe they can put extra people on your job and take that from a 3-day job to a 2-day job. Okay, so you save a day, but you're probably paying a premium. Sometimes we hear all the time that people are quoting the same jobs we're quoting for 2 to 3 times what we're paying or what we're charging. And then with the Joe Schmo with the truck, some people call him a chuck in a truck. You kind of don't know what you're going to get with that. There's no one behind them. There's no company. There's no project management team.
2 Google reviews.
Really, and one of them's a good one. And they're going to charge significantly less maybe than what we're going to charge. But what we often hear with those kind of people are we don't know if we're going to get them to show up. They don't answer their phone. They come back with more cost later on. So the price they quoted 100%. Isn't necessarily the price you're going to pay, but that quoted price sounds really good.
Right.
But then once you factor in the other stuff, it kind of starts to add up. So there's kind of everything in between those two as well. So that's kind of what you get with the whole spectrum of professional painting.
It's a good rundown, and it's true in most business aspects, but I think especially with painting, I'm going to look at the camera for this one. Get multiple quotes and pick someone who is trustworthy and cost efficient. So when it comes to actual paint quality, some of the things we'll hear maybe from parents is like, hey, is there a more washable option? Like what is, and we could even get to the nitty gritty, not too far, but like you've got different sheens of paint qualities, pricing. Give us the rundown on paint quality.
So people will ask like, where to get your paint? I'll tell them we typically buy from Sherwin-Williams. Great. I love Sherwin-Williams paint. And we're like, okay, hold on. Sherwin-Williams has 100 lines of paint. Yep. And you can get anything from a premium paint down to a standard stock builder grade paint that every run-of-the-mill builder is going to use in their homes. Now, the problem with that is they can get it super cheap, but when you're walking through a house that's just built and used one of these paints, you got to be careful not to sneeze too close to the walls or there's going to be a stain, right? And then
not great for parents, by the way.
Right. Absolutely don't recommend that. I mean, it looks great when you look at the receipt. However, when you actually put it on your walls, you're like, oh, there's a reason that people don't typically buy these paints. Yep. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, there are paints that have mold and mildew resistance built in. They're paint primer mixtures. They're premium paints. They're going to look really nice. They're going to be very user-friendly, have a really nice finish. They're going to have self-leveling properties and all that, so you don't see all the lines and the brush strokes and whatnot. They're also going to be more scrubbable and washable, but they're also going to be a premium. So whether you're paying for that or you're having a contractor put those on your wall. And then there's everything in between. They're high value paints where it's kind of in between the contractor grade, and some people say, well, I'm never going to scrub my walls. Right. Great. There's some other options that are going to save you a little money, but still have a very similar look to what you get out of it.
Yeah. Now you can go the professional and DIY route here, but let's talk rollers, brushes, spray. How do you determine what to use in a house on a specific project? And that's probably interior and exterior. A lot of variety there, but what's your rundown on that?
Yeah. So people often think, well, I'm hiring a professional. They're just going to come in and spray everything, right? Yep. No, we don't just walk in like guns a-blazing and just, let's
as nice as that would be.
I mean, it sounds great on paper, but there's some problems that come with spraying that typically with an interior house, we're not going to just go in and spray. Yep. We very rarely actually spray inside. The most of the reasons we would is if it's new construction, if there's nothing in the house at all that we have to worry about. Yep. That's when we might consider spraying, and even that, we're really only going to talk about spraying ceilings and trim. Okay. We're still going to give those walls a brush and roll kind of feel to them.
So what is that? Why does that feel out like a brush and roll feel on a wall?
So there's a couple reasons for that. So one, you can control the paint a lot better. Okay. With spray, there's a thing called overspray where the paint is not just going in the direction that you're spraying. It'll hit and it'll fly all over the place. It looks like dust, but it's actually paint particles. Yep. And when they get on things, it's extremely hard to clean those fine mist paint. Yep. And so what you're going to want is you're going to be able to control the paint a lot more. You're going to get even coverage. People think, wait, can't you get more even coverage with a spray? Actually, you don't. A lot of times we find that if you're going to use a sprayer, there's going to be light spots. There's going to be heavy spots, because to move at a consistent pace is actually very challenging. And so if you're going to do that, if you want to DIY and you just want to rent a sprayer and say, forget what Jordan said, what does he know? Right? I'm going for it. That's fine. You can do that. I recommend, if you're going to do that, spray it and then have a roller ready that has a little bit of paint on it, and you're going to roll back over everything you just sprayed. And that's going to assure for even coverage and a real nice smooth
There's the
finish.
DIY tip of the day. That's good.
Yeah. If you use a spray, just know it's not going to just spray it and forget it, right? Yep. So
brushes and rollers, difference there?
Absolutely. I mean, brushes are going to get you into fine details. They're going to get you in the nooks and crannies that a roller can't get you. A roller is going to be great for large areas, big surfaces. A roller is very efficient and effective for evening out your surface, right? A brush, you can still get some buildup. A roller is what's going to spread that out and make sure it's a nice, even finish.
Cool. As we're kind of wrapping things up here, you're in the industry, you're asked all the time, Jordan, I want to neutralize my house. What color should I use? Or Jordan, what's trending right now? Yeah. Trending colors or things, just what direction is the market going right now?
Yeah, so a couple years ago, we saw everyone wanted to paint their house gray or white.
And people are pretty over the gray, by the way. For the most part,
I think you're right. Now, there is a color that's been coming up a lot recently that's called Eider White.
Okay.
EIDER. It's a weird name. Eider White is one of those colors that you walk into a house and you think, oh, you painted your house white. But then you actually painted your trim like a bright white.
Yep.
And there's a difference.
Contrast, yeah.
So it's got a little bit more of a gray undertone to it. But no one would ever walk into your house and say, oh, you painted gray. Now, the reason that I bring that up in the undertones idea is because there are a lot of whites that carry undertones that when you see it on a little card, it's really hard to see the undertones. Yep. But when you blow it up in a whole room, especially if you've got a big 2-story room or 2-story wall, you're going to start to see those undertones. And then you're going to start thinking, did I paint my house yellow?
Yeah.
Did I paint my house
especially
pink?
With the wood floor contrast. You'll hear painters say stuff like, oh, it's pulling green. What does pulling green look like? Right. You don't want to find out the hard way when it's in the whole room.
Exactly. Yeah, we've had situations before where we paint a whole house in a specific kind of white. People walk in and say, you painted my house yellow. Yeah. I'm like, no, I didn't. I painted it the color that you wanted. And they're looking at it and they're like, that's not this color. And I'm like, put it on the wall. Yeah. You hold it on the wall and it blends in perfectly. Yep. It's like, I had no idea.
It is unfathomable how many whites, grays, and creams they can have at a place like Sherwin-Williams, but it does matter. So how do you help people make that selection?
Yeah, so there's a couple tricks that you can do. One, if you go on Sherwin-Williams' website, you can type in any color and you can actually see what this color looks like. Interior, exterior, and kitchens, bathrooms, living rooms, and you can get a really good feel for what that color looks like. And they usually put it next to like a pure white ceiling, pure white trim. So you can see, okay, if my ceilings were a pure white, this is what this color is actually going to look like. Yep. That's one trick, is to go on Sherwin-Williams' website. If you don't want to do that, what I actually prefer more than buying little quart samples and painting it on your walls is actually get pieces of construction paper or get like some cardstock, something like that. Paint it on those, and then you can move that from room to room and use that. Because sometimes what will happen is, you have, and I've seen this where somebody bought 15 different paint samples. They painted them all in the same area. Yep. And what people actually start doing is they're comparing the colors to one another, not deciding which color I like in this room, right? Because the reality is you're not going to have all 15 colors in your room. You're going to have one color in your room. And that color has to go with everything else that's in your room. It's good. Which aren't those other colors. Right.
The DIY person, let's wrap this up.
Oh, man.
If they are going to Sherwin-Williams or to Home Depot, wherever, and let's just say, for example, a room, they're going to paint a room. What stuff do they need to come back with to successfully paint a room and also protect that room if it's a house that they live in at the moment?
Okay. So you're definitely going to buy more rolls of tape than you think you're going to need. And the number one thing that I always tell people, and I don't know, I honestly don't think enough people take me up on this, buy a box or a roll of painter's plastic. Painter's plastic, it comes in a box about this big, doesn't look like much, but then it unfolds to either 9 feet or 12 feet wide. And this stuff will be magic, because obviously you've heard the saying, like, you want to be more safe than sorry. Yep. Painter's plastic will save you so much time if you just take it, open it up, cover everything in the room. Assume that you're way sloppier than you are, because the reality is you're going to get paint in places that you will never expect or be prepared for. So cover even the furniture around. Even if you're not painting the ceilings, cover your couch, because even if you think you're going to be careful, there's lots of things that could go wrong. And it's not always easy to get paint out of a couch, especially if it's a nice one. So cover more than you think is necessary. When it comes to actually applying the paint or pouring the paint out of a can, every paint store, whether you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, Sherwin-Williams, wherever you go, they're always going to ask, do you want stir sticks? Don't take the stir sticks. This is interesting. Go the James Bond method, shake it, not stirred, right? Just shake the can before you open it. Unless you have a 5-gallon bucket. If you got a 5-gallon bucket, nobody's going to shake that. Those things are heavy. You always underestimate how heavy those are going to be. If it's a single-gallon can, shake the thing. Don't worry about it. Otherwise, you're just going to have a mess when you stir up the paint. You pull that paint stick out. What are you going to do with it, right? Everybody. That's honestly more often where people end up getting paint somewhere that they don't want to.
I believe it 100%.
Is with the paint stick, right? Shake the can up. It's going to actually shake the paint up a little bit better than a stir stick will. Shake it up, open it, pour the paint into whatever cut-in bucket you have. You can buy the ones from Sherwin-Williams that are made for paint. They have a little magnet on the back. You can stick your brush right to it. Or I've even used like a coffee cup before, like a to-go coffee cup, just use it, something that your brush can fit in. You just want to have something that you can carry around, that you're not carrying a whole bucket of paint around, but it's a manageable thing for the size of your hand, whatever it is.
Great. Let's talk brushes, rollers, and like, do you need a primer if you're painting a room? How does that work?
Yeah, for sure. So brushes, I'll touch that first. Typically about a 2.5 inch brush, 2.5 to 3 inch brush is good for any starter DIY person. You're going to see brushes that are smaller than that. They're going to kind of be a waste of time, honestly. Everything you need to get to in a typical house, you can get to with a 2.5 to 3 inch brush. Just fan that thing out. The little bristles will get down into the cracks and crevices perfectly. Now, rollers, I recommend anything from like a 3/8 inch nap to a 1/2 inch nap. And all that's talking about is the thickness of the fuzz, basically. That's on the roller. Anything beyond that, anything thicker than that is going to kind of leave a little bit more of a texture on your wall. Anything thinner than that may not provide as even coverage. When you get like the 3.5 to 1/2 inch nap, it's going to work paint into different areas. Get around like nails and things like that, or whatever may be there. Hopefully you remove the nails.
So whether it's a dark room, light room, is primer required? Best practices?
Yeah,
what does that
absolutely.
look like?
People are always asking, like, do I need to prime the walls first? And most paints that you're going to buy are going to have a paint primer mixture in them. Now, there are still times when you would want to prime your room first. Primers are typically going to be cheaper than the actual gallon of paint you're going to buy. So a room like this, if we're going to paint it white, I'm definitely going to prime it first, because I'm going to get it closer to the color that I want it to be for half the cost, right? So I would prime a room like this. Now, if the room was relatively close and I think I'm going to cover it with 2 coats anyway, I don't even think about primer. Now, some exceptions to that. If there's something on the wall that's out of the ordinary, we mentioned water stains earlier. Water stains are not going to cover with paint. Water stains are always going to bleed through paint almost immediately. So you have to prime those. You have to get a good stain blocking primer. A lot of times it's an oil primer or something like that. Now, what I would recommend in those cases, get a spray can of the oil primer. Oil primer is not going to wash out of your brush. It's not going to wash out of your roller. So don't mess around with that and paint thinners and all that to clean it up. It's awful. We don't do it. We don't recommend anyone else to do it. Just get the can, spray over the stain, give it time. Most of those stain blocking primers are going to dry within 10 minutes. Let it dry, then hit it with your paint. Stain gone.
That's a nice hack to have that be a sprayer. My last question to you mentioned coats. What's right for a room with coats of paint? Like, I think my expectation is always, if it's primed or not, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to paint a room. I paint it. I spend all that time going into all the details. Yes, I'm done. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe you need 2 or 3 coats. What does that look like?
So if you see any kind of color coming through the paint at all, put another coat on it. I would say 90% of the time, 2 coats will cover any color. Now, obviously, dark colors to light colors, especially, if people are going to a white or something like that, something close to a white. If you're covering like a dark blue like we have here, that's going to take a little more. That's probably going to be a 3-coat system. Now, most paints are going to need a 2nd coat. The 2nd coat's just going to give it a little more fine tuning and silkiness to the look of the wall.
Cool. Well, we love Curtis Painting. How can people reach you if they're in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Dayton? They want you guys to come out, at least quote a job. What's the best way to get in contact?
For sure. CurtisPainting.com. You can click Get a Free Estimate. It'll ask you to fill out a little information, and we'll reach out to you within 24 hours.
Perfect. Dude, thank you for your time.
Appreciate you.
Hey, as always, thanks for rocking with us. Super appreciative of Jordan and his insight today. If you know somebody that we need to interview locally because they're doing something awesome, a new project coming up we should focus on, or a neighborhood tour you want us to hit, comment below or shoot us a DM. We would love to get all around Cincinnati and the surrounding areas and Dayton and Northern Kentucky to highlight cool stuff going on in the city. And if you're getting ready to DIY a paint job, hopefully today's video was helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe below, and we'll see you in the next one.